Oh, guys, well, welcome to the Contractor Commute. We're excited to have you guys here today. We wanted to kick off the episode a little bit different today. We've been getting some comments, and, we've asked you guys for comments on, episodes and on YouTube as well. And so just wanted to hit it off with a quick comment from a follower and maybe give some advice on what they said. So we had a comment that said, our biggest challenge is collecting receivables. My husband has a habit of wanting to write off balances just because the bill was made up late or the bill is old. He doesn't even try to reach out to his customers to collect. This drives me bonkers. So I'd go ahead and reach out to the client only to find out they never got the bill or we did not have the right email address for them. What advice you got, Ben?
Well, it's so easy to get behind on billing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think really just comes down to some of the stuff we're going to talk about today. But invoicing needs to be routine.
Yeah.
It needs to be something that you just do once a week where you're sending out invoices and just make it a habit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when things get late, it becomes harder to bill. But even in those cases, you still can send a bill out. And I think the farther away it is, you feel it's this almost embarrassment about sending a bill out. So I think really send the bills out anyway. Call people and just, hey, got this invoice outstanding out there. Just want to make sure that you're aware of it. Kind of give them the benefit of the doubt. Even if you're 6 months late, calling somebody up, letting them know you need the money. Don't be afraid to ask. And I think it's amazing how much more of that stuff you can collect than you think you can.
Yeah, that's good.
So just get after it. Never be afraid to ask people for money. I think it's the bottom line. Just being like, hey, I know it's late. We dropped the ball on this one, but it would really help us out if you could square this up. And people come through.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, you'll have somebody that doesn't. But
that's good.
Yeah, I have sympathy. I mean, it's very easy to get behind. Yeah, it's tough to keep up on top of it. But make it a routine moving forward. So every week, make sure those invoices are getting sent out. Set out a 2-hour block of time or whatever it takes. Just be like, okay, we're going to send out invoices.
Yeah, I think one thing that kind of comes up in my mind with this comment specifically is a husband-wife team, sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe sitting down, having a conversation about a cadence or who owns that part, right? Like, is it something that you can accomplish as the wife? Like, hey, are you going to be the one to send out invoices so that way they're, consistent? I don't want it to cause strife in a marriage, you know what I mean? So
yes,
maybe have a conversation, sit down and just have an honest conversation about it, like without the emotions fresh. It's my counseling
a weekly
advice.
business meeting. Like if you're in business together, sometimes you just need to sit down and talk. My wife and I have done a lot of things in business together, and it's like, hey, Mary, let's sit down and go through where we're at with things, because it's very easy to just assume we're on the same page when sometimes it's not the case.
Yeah,
so
that's good.
Good one. Thanks for sending that in.
For sure. Yeah, can't wait to get the next one. Let us know. So today we're going to talk about, are you being cheated? Or have you ever been cheated too? We can kind of hit on that a little bit. And really this episode came up just in some conversations that we've had recently with contractors. I don't know of a contractor that maybe hasn't been cheated before in business.
Yep.
I'm not saying it's a consistent thing for everybody, but we had a recent occurrence, and maybe you can break down kind of what happened with.
Yeah, it was a very interesting situation. I had some scrap from an office remodel project we had here, and I just put it up for free on Craigslist, and somebody had sent me, multiple people had contacted, and one person stood out. I will be there to pick the stuff up if you still have it. And as we started talking, as we're loading up the stuff in his truck, which was a whole another side topic, but he had mentioned, if you ever need anything done, I'm looking for work. Essentially, I'm in construction. I can do so many different things, and he communicated, I can do anything, I can do everything. Just whatever you need, just let me know. He also is just like, just let me know. I can start anytime, just very flexible, anything can be done, anytime it can be done, and pretty much any price too. You dictate the price, I'm cheap, I'll work for you, and, just pay me when it's done. So these are the kind of what he communicated as a part of, what I'm hearing as a part of that is there was enough of the story there for me to feel like I could be sort of reasonably assured that he could do something real well. And I tried to narrow it down, being like, well, what are you best at? Everything. Well, what is the one thing you have the most experience? Well, painting. Okay. So we got into that, but and narrow it down. I'm thinking, okay, there's probably enough here where I can work with this guy. But boy, what he was communicating was
kick me.
Yeah, right.
Basically. I mean, seems ridiculous and mean, but
it is 100% what he's communicating. And really, he's just saying, if you're a person of integrity and you're going to give him, but at the same time, what is he worth? He doesn't know. I don't know.
Right.
Is he fast? Is he good? Nobody knows because he's not communicating that what he can do, how much it's going to cost, etc. And I think that's the perception that it's so easy for somebody. He's not wanting to communicate that, but what I'm hearing is, I don't know what I do, and I can do anything, and I don't know what it's going to cost you, which is dangerous for somebody who's hiring somebody like that. So. Enough of the story was authentic for me to be like, okay, I felt sorry for the guy. I was like, I have work we can give him. We'll try him out, see if he's any good. Kind of stuff that he couldn't really mess up too bad.
You could have somebody else fix it.
Right. I'm like, okay, I'll take the risk on this guy. I felt some compassion. I thought, okay, well, I'll give him some work. And then as things started going down, he said, well, I'll be there tomorrow, and that ended up being a couple days later. And, it was I think it was 2 or 3 days later he showed up, texted, say, I'll be there in the morning. And then it ended up being the afternoon. I had to run to the scrap place to drop stuff off. And it ended up being a very inconsistent experience. Mm-hmm. He ended up doing some work. I could see he was decent at it. And I thought, okay, well, in the meantime, though, when he first contacted me, I was contacting one of my contractor friends and said, hey, I got a guy that could probably do some painting for you if he needs stuff done. Yeah, absolutely, send me his number. And then I'm thinking, oh no, what did you do, Ben? Like, I'm sending a referral to a guy that doesn't show up.
Right.
And I think he's definitely communicating the kick me type of, that he's very vulnerable. Mm-hmm. But I think that uncertainty and and not being able to show up, he's going to get cheated, mm-hmm. right? And I think somebody's going to come along and take advantage of that. And just be like, okay, I'll dictate the price. I'll give you $100 a day or $50, or you took too long, so I'm going to pay you less. The guy's being taken advantage of, and it's sad.
Right.
And as we started thinking about, like, what's the core problem of that whole, as things went down with that guy? Because I did have a heart of being like, man, I see what's happening here. The guy can't find the next job. He even said something like, just praying for work. I need more work. And I'm thinking, you're looking at more work. I have a job for you, and I have a next job, and I have referrals for you, but you can't get it done, can't show up on time.
Can't follow through.
And you don't know what you're worth.
Right.
So I think we should just break that down. The core problem being the guy doesn't know what he's worth. I think the real danger is when you don't have a good handle on that yourself, and that changes over time too. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Mm-hmm. But when you don't know what you're worth, you rely on somebody to dictate what you're worth, and that's usually your customer, right?
Right.
Or yourself, I guess, and be like, well, and you can get stuck in the past and be like, well, I used to work for $20 an hour 20 years ago. And I think it's just very easy for other people to just come in and say, yeah, I'll just give you $100 for that. How's that sound?
Well, and the problem is you're letting other people dictate what you're worth who aren't experts in what you do, and they have a conflict of interest too. They're not on your team. You know what I mean? Like, they're just like, hey, I want the best deal I can get, for this job. Get it done fast, get it done inexpensive, get it done well. That's awesome. And so setting yourself up to be taken advantage of.
Yes.
Really, if you don't know your worth.
And customers have a hard time with that too. Well, $100 sounds fair to me. If like,
even if their motive isn't like wrong to like actually take advantage of someone, it's like, well, you didn't tell me that it was something different. So that sounds like, to your point, that sounds fair.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's, how would you go about setting that, I guess, becomes the question of like, what are you worth? And there are people that can help you get a handle on what you're worth. And how many people do we talk to, Kinsey, that have a wrong idea of what they're worth? So many guys running around, charging a wage that we're thinking, you can't pay your bills off of that. You can't cover your tools. You can't cover the truck. You can't cover everything for that wage. I mean, like, it's impossible. You have skills, you have knowledge and abilities that are worth way more than what you're charging.
For sure.
So there are people that can help you with that, to your point, Kinsey, don't have a conflict of interest. Mm-hmm. You can't have somebody if you're working for a contractor and you ask him what you're worth, well, he's too conflicted to tell you an honest answer. But somebody else that's a buddy or somebody else, they can give you a handle. This is what I can do. What's that worth? Mm-hmm. You'd be surprised sometimes.
Yeah, that's good.
And I think the other thing about this, the communication bit, I mean, as a consumer, when somebody is poor with the communication, it speaks so much, doesn't it, about how things are going to go down. Can they fulfill the work? When they can't communicate well, you're thinking, are they actually going to get the job done? You have question marks going off in your head. Mm-hmm. The whole like, well, I hope this works kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. And so I think having a real good, clear handle on communication and being like, this is what I can do. So he needs a clear service offering of being like, I am a painter. So what should he have said, I guess, is really being like, I'm a painter. I set tile. I've been doing that for 20, 30 years, whatever it's been. I can do, other things, of course, but that's the focus. This is what I'm really good at.
Yeah.
I charge $50 an hour, $60 an hour, whatever that is. He has a wage defined. And, he's trying to speak to the fact that he's just somebody just randomly came across, right?
Right.
But if he knew what he was worth, he'd be not afraid to ask it.
Right.
I'm worth $50 an hour, and if something's wrong, I'll make it right. That's all I need to say.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So let's break down like a few things. Obviously that is like a non-ideal scenario and really can give a bad rap in the construction industry too, of like what people think of contractors is like, hey, not reliable, doesn't follow through, those kinds of things. So like even from that perspective, from like a consumer side of things, I think it's important for us to be aware of like where that comes from. And I think a lot of that, that perspective, obviously the guys listening to this aren't not in this boat. But having that perspective, I think is important to be able to make a change or, analyze how you're communicating things. If you're upfront communicating, oh, I can do it for less, or things like that, like you're giving your customer permission to ask for less,
Yeah,
and again,
take advantage of me, essentially.
Right. And so I think it's super important. So let's kind of like dive into what are the things that contribute. I know we broke down the story, talked about ideal scenario of what, maybe how he could have communicated to get more work and, some of those things. But what, from your perspective, are things that really contributed to him, or people being cheated, contractors being cheated?
Yeah. Number one, doesn't have a handle on his pricing, doesn't have a clear service offering. I think we kind of hinted at that already, but it's more or less being like, these are the things that I do. This is what I charge to do them. And we're clear on that right at the beginning. I expect to get paid weekly or whatever that cadence is. Right. Being late, unreliable, huge turnoff, and I think it contributes to people devaluing you because you're basically saying, I don't respect your time. And somebody said, well, I don't respect your time either. It's just a very kind of it just snowballs, right? So,
and it produces a lack of trust, right? Because it's like, well, they're not actually following through with what they're saying they're going to do. Yep. So therefore, I don't know how this is going to go. I got to protect myself, protect my dollars, protect my, It kind of puts up a guard from that relationship of what could be, a really, really great relationship. It makes people defensive.
There's a lack of discipline too. The being able to say, when I make a commitment, I have to keep it. And don't make commitments unless you can keep them. And I think deep down, not to be too hard on Steve here, he knows he wants to keep a commitment, but at the same time, he's overcommitting in an effort to try to win people over. I can do it fast. I can do anything, anytime, because I need the work. Instead of being like, that's not how you gain trust. It's by saying, I can't get to that job until next week, but I want to be able to make you happy, and I will show up on Tuesday. Yeah. And when you say I'll be there Tuesday, you better be there Tuesday. Yeah.
Which would have been fine in our
totally
we would have been like, that's great.
Fantastic.
In our
if you told me next month, I wouldn't have cared. But if you tell me tomorrow and don't show up, then it's like, what happened?
Yeah, exactly. Then you ask questions.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's good. Okay, so you had another experience that we were talking about too of, somebody else who maybe didn't have all processes defined in terms of like contracts and some of those kinds of things, but you were still pleased with their work. Break down that story and that experience, that of you working with Tanner.
Yeah, so met Tanner. I think this was a very like social media type of connection through somebody. My wife found this guy, yes, and so and it was a text message communication with him on the beginning of, this is what we want done. He came out, took a look at it. Send over a price list. This is what we do. We do brush hogging, we do land clearing, we do tree removal. This is the equipment we have. This is the pricing.
How do you send it?
Text.
Okay.
So nothing too fancy. This is what we do. And so then we engaged, said, yeah, we'd like to get this work done. He looked at it, said, okay, this is, we'll get started. We're really snowed under. He's like, how bad do you need this done? And from my perspective, I thought that was a little bit, that's giving your customer opportunity to say tomorrow.
Sure. And
putting extra unneeded pressure instead of just being like, man, we're really snowed under. I can't get that for another month. And then call me in 2 weeks saying, hey, I had an opening. I can get you in sooner.
Yeah,
that was
listen to our negative expectation
yeah,
podcast.
Yes, negative expectations. So he could have done a little bit better with that, but communication was great. I'll be there in a couple of weeks. Showed up on a Thursday, showed up on time, got right after it. Work was getting done, kept running with it, didn't pull off to another job. It was like when he, better to start later and keep going as opposed to being overcommitted. And sent me a text message and said, hey, this is, daily text message, just kind of a run through of rates. And I think where it's so hard for guys to ask for money, I've been in that position of just being like, well, we'll get to that later. So I asked him, just let me know when you want to get paid. And he said, well, can I pick up a check tomorrow? And so.
Why do you think it's hard for people to ask to get paid? Is it back to the worth thing? Or like wonder what they think of me, kind of?
I think it's some lack of confidence there, probably.
Yeah.
I think it's also too not necessarily a routine type of expectation set up front. I think that's why we really have to be upfront telling people, I bill out once a week, and it happens. If there's $100 owed, you're billing it out once a week. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but you're training your customer what to expect.
Yeah.
And I think that's the piece that gets missing.
Yeah. And maybe even one step further would be, hey, this is when we bill, and this is when we expect to be paid.
Yes.
Right. So that you're actually like giving a timeline for that so that it's not like, hey, you have 30 days to pay this or whatever. You know what I mean? You don't know customers' experience with invoices and, paying mortgages. You know what I mean? There's so many bills that actually come for consumers that it's like giving the expectation of, hey, we expect to be paid in a week or a couple days or on Friday or same day or, you know what I mean? Setting that up front so that way it's not a surprise and you're not like seeming like you're broke at the end of the job either. I mean, there's a balance there, right?
Yes.
So
there's a real easy tendency to get way behind on projects. I mean, the comment at the beginning of this episode, somebody's struggling, realizing they have all of these invoices out there outstanding and just being like, well, I don't know if we can even collect those anymore. If that expectation set up front of being like, we're going to send you an invoice on Friday, we're going to pick up a check on Monday, always play like you're behind. Even if you have $100,000 in the bank or if you're just sitting on a pile, like just play like you're behind.
That's good.
It's the only way you stay on top of it. And you also weed out customers you don't want to be working for because the customers that don't want to pay you won't pay you.
Right.
And you will identify that 1 week in. And at that point, cut ties. I mean, you do it nicely, but you can be like, well, we need to get squared away and then we can continue.
Right.
But there's people with all kinds of excuses and you'll weed those people out by having process.
For sure.
And this is back to why we enable ourselves to be cheated is by letting stuff like that go.
Right.
Every single time I've ever been cheated, it's been enabled by me, not intent. I didn't have any intent of doing that, but it's, nonetheless by people looking for little holes in my process and being, oh, look at that.
I can take advantage
this guy
of that.
says, kick me.
Yeah.
And they did.
Yeah. And you felt it.
Yeah. Boy, did that hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Okay. So process of like growing an actual business, I think we have like five things we kind of like, there's probably way more. And obviously we talk about growing a business, building a business, systemizing a business, creating processes, having better training, we have lots of episodes on lots of different things. So it can't be summarized in one episode. But in terms of like, from these stories from Steve, from Tanner, obviously those are pretty polar opposites, but Tanner had better communication. He followed through and did what he said he wanted to do.
Yeah. We started off with Steve.
Yeah.
Struggling, praying for work, looking for opportunities, being taken advantage of by God knows how many people.
Right.
I want to be. I haven't paid that guy a dime yet. I would love to. I would love to pay him to get something done, but nothing's got done.
Yeah.
And he hasn't asked me for money. I've asked him to let me know when you need to get paid.
Yeah.
So here's a guy that's praying for work, needs money. There's opportunity. There's referrals. There's jobs, and just a few key pieces missing. You know what I mean? I mean, I'd be referring him to all kinds of people, all the connections in our pool. I mean, if he just came in, showed up, did stuff and said, man, I'm looking for more work, man, we could refer so many people to him.
For sure.
So the answer to his prayer is already there. He just needs to show up. He needs to be able to set, this is what I do. This is what I charge to do it. I'll send you an invoice once a week. And he has a business.
Yeah.
So speaking of your point of growth, you don't have to over sophisticate starting and running a business. It's that simple.
That's good.
Being able to communicate like, this is what I do and not making it complicated. Nobody does everything.
Sure.
It's a very clear service offering and being like, these are the things I'm good at. These are the things I do. This is what I charge you to do it. I'm going to bill you once a week. I'm going to show up when I say to show up. And if there's if there's a problem with that, then obviously you communicate that. Be like, well, we had a job take longer. Can we postpone this a week?
Yeah. I think we feel really passionately about finding the things that you're good at and the things that you love doing, right? And doing those things. It is okay and better for your business to define what that is and know that internally as well. Yeah, you might have done something before, but that doesn't make you an expert at it. And so I think we care, and we've talked about this a lot, but finding a niche, finding a specialty, finding, knowing what you're good at will set your business up for growth, will set your business up for, scale, and will allow you to get more referrals, because then you're able to have only the equipment you need, only the tools you need for that certain thing. You know what I mean? You can scale a business way better, faster, and get more referrals if you actually focus on one thing, because then people know what to refer you for. If you're just a handyman and you're like, I do everything, then the only time you're going to get referred is when somebody's like, hey, do you know handyman? Mm-hmm. Versus like, hey, I need painting done, or I need so-and-so, a specific thing done. You're going to get way more referrals if you can actually specialize in a thing, get great at it, and then grow your business that way.
I had a contractor really a handyman that came to do work for me. And this is speaking to your point. I had him, because he didn't have a clear service list, I had him, well, what can you do? Well, this, and the other thing. And some of the things were very mediocre that he did. And it was, this door didn't close right. And, he installed this door, and this, there was a lot of issues with the things he did. You think about contrasted with, I'm a trim carpenter and I show up and that's what I do is trim houses. Just flying through it. Right. That's the thing you love, you're passionate about, you're good at. Next thing you know, there's all kinds of work. There's builders lined up wanting you to do that specific thing. The other thing we talked about a lot is it's so easy to have this tendency to like, well, because I've done something a few times that we'll just keep doing that. As an example, if I was talking to a friend, we're doing a little bedroom remodel project at our house, our guest bedroom. Mm-hmm. And I grew up taping drywall, so I'm pretty good at it. I've done, thousands of hours of drywall taping. So maybe not the best, but I'm very proficient at it. Yeah, very proficient at it. And so a friend of mine came over and he said he was looking at what we were doing. And he was like, well, I'm not good at drywall. And he was looking at what I was doing and said, he'll want to learn more about it. And I started thinking about what that would look like if you were in a business and because you had done something a couple of times and you got into doing drywall taping. Mm-hmm. The inefficiency and how long it would take you to do something just because you could do it versus just hiring somebody to do it. That's a huge cost. Yeah. And somebody comes along looking at, well, what are you worth? They're not going to pay you $50 an hour to essentially learn how to tape drywall. Right. And so it's a hidden cost that sometimes we don't even realize that, maybe not a cost, but I mean, it's cost to you by doing something that you're not proficient at. Right. Yeah.
Well, and I think from a remodeler context, we have a lot of people that listen that are remodelers and self-fulfill a lot of things. But I think one thing we would highlight is of everything that's involved in doing a remodel, find people to partner with. You don't have to GC or sub out the whole project, but what are the things that you can find experts in and partner with them to get jobs done? You'll stay on schedule more, and you'll fulfill. Your product will be better at the end of the day. So
it's great. It's very hard to hire unicorns too. Yeah. So having people hey, I need 30 things done. Somebody that's like, they're going to be okay at best. Right. Yes. At some of those things.
For sure. Yeah, I'm not an expert in everything that I want to do, either. So, or don't want to do.
Right. There's that too. Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of things I don't want to do.
Yeah. You were talking about your dad's kind of business, and there was a story with trimming there.
Oh, yes. Back when I was a kid, I think I was probably 9, 10, 11 years old, somewhere in there. My dad was transitioning from working with a builder to starting his own business. And he came across he was a home builder. This guy, a friend of my dad's, and he said, I need some houses trimmed out. My dad's a very good trim carpenter. And he said, I need this job done. We're under the gun. We need it done in a week. My dad said, yeah, we can get it done. He came in there, knocked the thing out in 3 days. The guy was like, well, I got more to go. And he said, how'd you guys get it done in 3 days? And he said, well, you needed it done in a week, so we did it. And he said, well, I thought 2, but, you got it done faster. He was used to setting an expectation for something to take a week and it would take 2, and he was happy, Right. So it was one of those things where there was all kinds of work and referrals that came out of that. And my dad didn't even have all the rest of the process. All he did was show up, get something done, and do it fast.
He followed through.
Yeah. And I think so take the piece that you're good at
Yeah.
and run with that. And obviously there's a few key things here, and there's a lot more to running a business. There's a lot more you can scale and grow and managing people and all the rest of it. But at its essence, the core of not being cheated is making sure that you're not cheating yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, like knowing what you're worth, coming in there and saying, this is what I do, and this is how it's gonna play out.
That's good. Yeah, I think the picture, the ideal scenario, and there's more to it, but the ideal scenario of how do you build a business to not be cheated is make sure you have an upfront process. We've talked about have your pricing upfront, those kinds of things. I'm thinking of Jeremiah Lee. We had him on our podcast actually quite a while ago. It was probably a year and a half ago.
Yeah, we need to have him back.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah.
It's probably a year and a half ago. Remodeling company in town, locally where we're at, Springfield. And, I think it's a second generation business. His dad started the business. But, their process is a customer calls, looking for maybe a bid or, hey, I'd like to do a project on my house. And the first thing they're doing is they're qualifying, right? They're not saying, yeah, I can be there tomorrow to look at the job. They're saying, well, we're actually 2 to 4 months out right now. And our process is, we have a design process that we go through with a design agreement. So that way we make sure that you save money in the long run. You're not spending more at the end of the project because we didn't know what we were building up front. You know what I mean? Like those kinds of things. Like I think that's probably the ideal scenario, if we're going full process, full send on process, for a business. But you don't have to start there, and every trade is going to be different. A remodel is obviously and a new build, you need design, for that. If you're just doing a painting job, those kinds of things, a little bit different there. But understanding timeline, understanding the customer's budget, those kinds of things, having that all up front, it's funny, in my sales career, we always used to say, like, don't have commission breath. And essentially it's like, don't be so overeager to, like, win the job in that specific moment. Like, let your customer be more excited a little bit than even you are. You know what I mean? Like, let them kind of chase more than you're chasing, if that makes sense. And so,
100%.
Anyways, I think that's from an upfront standpoint and building a business to have more processes and to ensure you're not going to be cheated. Setting those expectations up front, discussing the process, laying it out, educating your customer on the process is a huge point to making sure that you don't get cheated again.
It's really good. Process, when you talk about educating the customer, is one of the things that sometimes we really just sort of almost blame the customer for not understanding a process they don't clearly, of course, they don't understand.
Yeah.
Like, my goodness, can you believe that they expected us to do that? Well, of course. Your job as the expert is to come in there and say, well, this is our process, and you don't have to be arrogant about it. It's just more or less, this is the way we do it, and this is why. And you're the voice of expertise in that. And when people are so respectful of that, when they say, well, that makes a ton of sense. Okay, thank you for answering my questions. As opposed to, of course, doesn't everybody, you don't have to go too far with educating. Yeah.
That's good. No, that was fun. We talked about a lot of stories today. Hopefully that was relevant to people. What are some final thoughts, key takeaways for guys and gals listening?
As I'm kind of mulling this over, because some of these stories are from the last couple of weeks, there's some real subtle ways that we can be cheated that I don't even think we necessarily call out in our own minds as building professionals. Sometimes we're just writing off a bill. Sometimes we're just telling somebody, well, don't worry about it. I'll take, or giving them a discount, not charging appropriately for something. That's ways that we cheat ourselves out of hard-earned money.
Right.
And it's so, what is that? We're just trying to be nice? I mean, like, why are we in business? I mean, yeah, but I mean, people are paying for something valuable in you as a builder, as a contractor. I mean, somebody that's, for all the blood, sweat, and tears that you put into learning what that's worth something. You have tools, you have that expertise, training. And so there's this subtle way we cheat ourselves or allow other people to take advantage of us. And I think the other really key point here, if you walk away with nothing else, is anytime you're taking advantage of, you enable it through just a shoddy process. And I think you're going to weed out the people that you don't want to work for by holding to process. And you need to walk away with this intrinsic value of being like, I know what I'm worth. I know what I do. I know what I'm good at. Not an arrogance, but nonetheless an understanding of the knowledge and experience you have is worth something.
Confidence. Yeah.
Confidence. Yep. Not arrogance. And then communication and just communicating up front, and then making sure you're disciplined with your process. Show up on time, bill on time, and you guys will win in these situations. I mean, it's not hard.
Yeah.
It's just sometimes overwhelming because there's so many things you need to do. But if you do nothing else, communicate well, bill on time, and show up and do things.
Yeah. Do what you say you're going to do.
Yes, right. Yeah. Don't overpromise, and I think that's a key here as well. So
yeah, that's good. Well, guys, let us know what you guys are running up against. We'd love to give you guys some feedback. We're going to start that segment at the beginning of each episode and kind of break down a comment and maybe give some tips, some pointers if we can, maybe some advice that's hopefully helpful. But comment, subscribe, and share. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks.